So welcome to the Working in Locations Department session. Thank you very much to everyone that's here. I'm just going to have a quick check to make sure we have got participants watching. Yeah. Minutes just for everyone to come in, because I can see that the room is filling up. So we'll wait 1 minute and then we'll start the session. This is quite weird because I've never actually done a webinar before. It's always been a Zoom call and I can see everyone. Okay, so we'll start. So yeah, welcome to the Working in Location Managers department session. So my name is Cindy Campbell and I head up Film Birmingham, which is it's a one-stop shop. It's for first point of call for filming in Birmingham and the region. So Film Birmingham sits within Birmingham City Council. We work with 11 local authorities in the West Midlands and deliver production services on their behalf to the industry. So the type of work we do is we issue permits, approvals, we host a locations, crew and facilities database. We handle thousands of requests that are all filming related. And we work with anyone from students to Hollywood blockbusters. So a production that wants to come and film the city is made up of many departments. And the department that we work closest with is the locations department. So I want to introduce you to our lovely panel. I think I'm going to have everyone introduce themselves, but on my screen, Michael, do you want to go first? Just say who you are and what you do. Yeah,
my name is Michael Grisewood. Actually, my name's at the bottom of the screen, so I probably didn't need to say all of that. I'm a location manager. I'm the series location manager on BBC Doctors. I've been working in locations for 20 years. I started off. Yeah, I know. I worked for the BBC. I've worked for the BBC for about 16 years as a freelancer, and I went on to a fixed-term contract in the last year. And so I've got a fine art background. I did a digital kind of film degree. I thought I was going to become a title sequence director, and then I met a location manager. I was desperate for cash, and the rest is history. And I started off in Casualty. Well, I didn't start off in Casualty. I started off in feature films, and then ended up getting work as a unit manager and the location manager on Casualty, and then working on Doctors as the location manager on Doctors, one of the location managers on Doctors. But I also freelance for a long period. I was going off and doing other jobs. So I location managed the festival. I was location scout on The Current War, one of the location scouts on Peaky Blinders. I prefer to scout. I'm a location manager of a certain age who's kind of, I suppose, moving into something slightly more easier. I moved up to Birmingham a couple of years ago. Actually, I was commuting a lot between Birmingham and Bristol, and eventually just made the decision to move to Birmingham. And I've had a lot of support from Cindy and from Film Birmingham, who I think are great. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Very comprehensive. And next is Ahmed. Hey, Ahmed.
Hi.
Hey, do you just want to introduce yourselves and just say a little bit about what you've done?
My name's Ahmed Roy, and I recently became a location manager on the third series of Man Like Mobean. Before that, I was the unit manager for the same series. And at the moment, I'm actually a unit manager working under Michael's amazing leadership on Doctors. He didn't actually know, I don't think he knew I was going to be on on this webinar. I'm supposed to be at work on set right now, so.
You seem to be in bed.
I literally just got here, Michael, and I'll be back on set before you know it. But yeah, basically, I became location manager last December for the series Man Like Molebean, and then COVID happened, and Doctors was the first thing that opened up, and I'm unit managing on that right now. But I like both jobs, unit managing and location managing. I think I prefer location managing, and we also work very closely with Film Birmingham when we're on Man Like Molebean or shooting anywhere actually in the West Midlands, basically. Film Birmingham. So thank you, Cindy.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And I was just going to ask you, Man Like Molebean, with that, is it that time of year again when they would have been shooting?
It would have been, yeah, but obviously again because of the lockdown and everything, they've had to postpone it to 2021. No idea when, but yeah. I'm sure I'll be there when it does happen. Looking forward to it.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And next is the lovely Becky Rooney.
Hello, I'm Becky Rooney. I've been in the industry 27 years, despite the fact I look much younger than that. I'm relatively new to location management. I've only been doing it a couple of years. I'm based in the West Midlands and I'm freelance, so I do everything. This week I've been sort of scouting for a music video, and I'm managing a commercial and scouting for a feature film, so I do quite a wide variety of broadcast and commercials. I cover quite a big area in the West Midlands, everywhere from the Cotswolds up to Stoke-on-Trent and sort of over to the east, Wolverhampton, Coventry over that side, and obviously work very closely with Cindy on various shoots. We love Film Birmingham because they make things happen, which is always very helpful when you're in the midst of a production. So yeah, that's me.
Cool. Oh, thanks, Becky. And last but not least, the award-winning Harriet Lawrence.
I think we'll forget about that award, but thank you. I've been working as a location manager for over 25 years. My degree was in photography, which is useful but not essential. And I fell into location managing in a sort of stint of working in retail after my degree, literally by accident. I hadn't ever heard this career existed. And I suddenly found a job I loved. I started in commercials, literally being thrown in the deep end. There was no training, and very small departments back then. There was a department of 1 in commercials, and in film and TV it was a department of 2 or 3 if you were lucky. So you'd end up juggling several jobs at once. But since the late 90s I've increasingly worked in drama, independent films, which is sort of where I'm happiest. I've done some studio pictures. I find the layers of American politics not to my liking. I'm better, I think, when I can be part of the creative team. What I love about our job is that it splits into 2 halves of the sort of creative bit, where you're part of the creative team working with the director and designer, and then halfway through the shoot you've suddenly got your logistic head on and trying to create solutions for all sorts of problems that are thrown your way. I have to say, after over 25 years, despite the rubbish and despite being out in miserable weather, I haven't found a job I would rather do. I think there are some days when I would like to think of something I'd rather do, but some days it's the best job in the world, and quite often that happens on the same day and within a few hours. I have a passion for architecture, geography, detail, geology, whatever it is. I can be exceptionally boring, as Cindy knows, about brickwork and whether it's the right brickwork for the part of the country or the right brickwork for the period of history. I'm really curious. That helps. My sister would call it nosiness, but it seems to work for me. I've worked on small TV dramas like Outnumbered or Parks and Recreation. I do quite a lot of British independent period films, Suffragette, My Cousin Rachel, David Copperfield last year, and then some bigger films. Overlord was a film for Paramount, and Bad Robot with much bigger sort of set pieces in it. I'm currently in prep for a 6-part series, drama series for Apple, which is set in the 1890s, again, a period one. And our prep has just been pushed for about 6 or 8 weeks. On Suffragette, I took the crew into the House of Commons, and we were the first film to ever film in the Commons. So that was really exciting. I also do a lot of training, as Cindy knows. I work with her, and over the last several years, Cindy, isn't it? It's been many years now, hasn't it?
It's 3 years now, yeah. It's going to be our 4th year next year, Harry. Yeah.
We've run a 2-day workshop, sort of getting people into the location department. And I've also, for about 14 years, run a longer training course for assistant location managers. So, yeah, that's me. I still think it's the best job in the world, mostly.
Brilliant, brilliant. I'm going to talk about Wild, working in the locations department course at the end of it. But I suppose there's quite a lot of people that are listening in on this webinar that don't really quite know how the locations department fits into the circus that production is. So as I was saying, you know, there are many different departments that come together to create content. So whoever wants to kick off, what's, yeah, I suppose the location department's role. I know it kind of says it on the tin, but also why it's important and how it works with other departments. Does anyone want to have a talk about that? Did that make sense, that question?
I think the biggest surprise, and this is to crew as well, actually, not just to people who don't work in the industry, is to find out that certainly the location manager and some of the location team are often on the job before the designer. So when there's only a director and a producer, and we go all the way through, we work right through the shoot and out the other side. And, you know, I'm sure the location managers here would agree that actually the Sparks find that amazing when you say, but I've been on this job for 9 months, and they're just looking at you thinking nothing existed before they rocked up. And we've been there working quite hard to create this world. You know, we do work with every department. We enable what they want to do. So from the start, we're working with designers, directors, helping them create their vision. And then when it gets nearer the shoot, we have all the other technical departments who all have requirements. And it's very much down to us to put those in place safely, legally, do the contracts, and actually just enable them to do their job when they turn up on set. Yeah. I'll throw that over to someone else to add to.
Yeah, and I was going to say, so I know Ahmed, so with Man Like Mobeen, just in terms of prep time, so when you actually start your first day of principal photography, when you actually start filming, how long before are you actually preparing for?
There's not that much time to prepare on Man Like Mobeen. It's usually 4 weeks prep.
Okay, that's very short.
That's short.
Yeah, mind you, I think because of the initial location manager last year, I think there was a delay. So this is the only time I obviously only did season 3, and I think I might have come in actually a week or 2 late. Just because the original location manager stepped down due to his own personal reasons, and then I had to step in. So that's how much time I had.
Okay, so you had 4 weeks prep, but
yeah.
the usual time's a bit, I'm sure it's a bit longer than that, but you just had 4 weeks prep.
If it is, honestly, it's not that much longer. I'll probably say maybe 5 or 6 weeks at most. Okay. But it's a really... Yeah,
How
it's
many
only,
locations are you prepping for that, Ahmed?
there's at least we pretty much shoot somewhere different every day, and sometimes twice in a day. So a lot of locations, but it's a very consolidated shoot. It's like 4 weeks shoot, like 5 days a week, and or yeah, I think I got those numbers right. Yeah. So it all happened really fast, and it was constant. I actually had Helen helping me as unit manager, which is weird because the roles were reversed, because usually I'm her unit manager, and she just sort of took care of the whole unit managing aspect. I only had to think about getting the locations for the actual shoot. But
Yeah.
I think I had an advantage just because where they shoot it is in Small Heath, which is where I grew up, and I'm just really well connected there. So it was it was just like rapid succession, really, of just getting these really interesting locations in a very short space of time. And because everybody's really lax there as well, in some ways, in certain ways, they're very lax. So I was able to pull it off.
So you were thrown at the deep end. So hence the 4 weeks prep, it wasn't the usual time. It's because you took over from somebody else.
Yeah, I think he had 3 or 4 major locations already locked in, so that helped as well.
Okay, cool. Becky, Rooney?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it depends the prep, right? So because there's some shows, well, and the scouting can start. I mean, there's a series I've been scouting for about 2 years that we've been working together on, Cindy, which is, they're still not in production. Obviously, COVID was a big chunk of that, so it probably would have been in production a few months earlier. But there's some sort of productions you can be in discussions with, or sort of throwing ideas around, or having an input into the sort of design of it for a couple of years in advance. But yeah, then others are last minute. So it does depend on what the project is, and how what the production is and how long it is, and yeah, it's quite variable.
Yeah, cool. And Michael, so just as long, I mean, talk about a typical day, if you have a typical day in the location manager's world.
Well, I suppose it depends at which part, really. There's as Harriet was saying, that like we come on at the same point usually as the director. The producer's been on beforehand. However, I worked on something last year where the director wasn't available, and I was asked to go out and find things, and I was like saying, well, what does he want? And they were like saying, well, you can't speak to him. And I was just, just driving around, kind of thing. So just like trying to throw ideas at them, but there's just like nothing coming back. So like a scouting day would just be kind of like getting out the door as early as possible. And so, sometimes it's driving around, other times it's doing kind of like research online, trying to make appointments. It just depends very much on what the brief is. And a lot of the time it's just kind of like following my nose. And then obviously when things start to get busier, there's a lot of, after the locations have been signed off kind of thing, and they've got agreement with the producer, the director and the designer, then there's it's very much around kind of like being in contact, doing a lot of office-based stuff, and then going out and doing recce's, taking people out and what have you, measuring up and things. And then the actual filming itself, like Harriet kind of like spoke up to the point really, which is just looking after every single department. But then it becomes very much about the nuts and bolts of like filming, the logistics, because it's basically putting on a live event every day. So we've got what's happening on set. So there's pre-dressing, which is happening, taking care of the parking outside of the location and the security of the location, and liaising with the location owner. And then it's like moving all of the unit around, which is all of the trailers, parking everybody up, like sorting out bins and things like that. So the kind of glamour level, because it's lovely at the beginning of a job. It's just like, there's a kind of painted with broad picture, you know, broad strokes and thinking this is going to be amazing, and by the end of it, it's like we've got a blocked toilet and it's your fault and you've got to sort it out. Kind of things. Yeah, that's what the days.
Okay, brilliant. So I just want to go a step back, because I've watched Harriet deliver her session that she does at Focus with the lovely Christina, and just talk about, so and also just for those that are watching to get an idea. So David Copperfield, so that story, the start of that project, so you were taken on as location manager. Were you given the scripts? Did you have to break it down to get locations? Just tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So hopefully there is a script, and I'm sure other people here will agree that not always. Hopefully you've got something to work with, and as Michael says, it's not unheard of not to have access to the director at the beginning, and you can do quite a lot of bringing together ideas, but you do need a steer after a while. In some ways, I suppose on Copperfield we were lucky. There is a known story, so okay, it's about 48 hours of audiobook, and we were squishing it into 2 hours, and Armando Iannucci was writing that adaptation, so we didn't know exactly what would be in it, but we had a loose version. Arm was actually in the States promoting the death of Stalin, so he wasn't around, and you know, ideally you are having input from the director, but also in a way Christina, the designer, who is Birmingham based, actually, she and I just had the most glorious sort of 4 weeks of going off and following our nose and coming up with ideas that we wanted, and we were literally just sort of driving around North Norfolk and exploring really, and talking it through, because we were in the car together, which of course at the moment you can't have that sort of time with the designer, which is a shame, because actually those 4 weeks were amazing with Christina, and we formed a huge amount of that film in that early part. I mean, Christina's just a wonderfully collaborative designer, and you get very different designers. Some just want you to sort of put into place their ideas because they filmed there before and that's all they want to do. Some are much more collaborative and want your input and your knowledge and your ideas, and that of course is much more fun when you can actually bring something to the table.
Brilliant. So okay, so you've been out, you've scouted, you've found a location that works. What happens? You
usually have to find lots of choices. So, you know, let's say you break down a script and you've got 50 locations for an 8 or a 10-week shoot, whatever it is. It can vary enormously. You know, some bigger features may only have 2 or 3 locations, but they might be for major set builds, whereas you know, a sort of long-running drama or something might, as Ahmed said, that they might be running for a very long time, but you know, they might have 2 or 3 locations a day and they're leaping around all over the place. So it does vary enormously, and sometimes you'll find 1 or 2 options for a set. Currently, and this has happened to me before, bizarrely, I'm on sort of my 90th church option, because
90.
for whatever reason, churches, it sounds stupid, but they're difficult, because if you're in the 1890s and you want a church that's old in the 1890s, it has to be pre-Victorian, it has to not be modernized, you have to not be near a busy road, you want it to be isolated, you know, not surrounded by everything. And bizarrely, on my cousin Rachel, we photographed over 120 churches, and bizarrely on this job I am in the same position of well, we're up to somewhere in the region of 85 to 90 that we've actually photographed. So it can vary enormously.
Wow. And Becky, at the moment, I know that you're working on a commercial, but you've also worked in drama. Is there a difference? Or what is the difference?
Yeah, there is a difference. I mean, I suppose every production is different. I mean, again, some commercials are quite simple. The one that obviously we work, we've got on at the moment is a very short. It's only a 1-day shoot, but it's an incredibly complex shoot to put together, involving multiple road closures and consultation with probably 300 or 400 businesses and residents. And so, that sort of it's hard to pin it down, really. I mean, just taking a step back and talking about briefs. I mean, again, when you get a brief, sometimes it's literally some fuzzy sort of pictures on an iPhone. And then this morning I got delivered the most beautiful brief, which is sort of pages of color palettes and, designs and inspiration. And so even the beginning of a production can feel quite different. I mean, the drama I've worked on particularly, that it's very hectic. It's kind of, you shoot in blocks and then you don't stop for sort of weeks and weeks and weeks, whereas commercials are a shorter hit. They're just as hectic, but I tend to only be on set for a few days or a couple of weeks at most.
Okay, cool. So Harriet, I know, so you find the location, whether it's 300 or 300, whatever that you've looked at, and you found the location that works. What happens from then? Just to give people an idea.
Well, then you have to start. You presumably started negotiating with the owner before you've got to that stage, because you will have told them a bit about it, and you will have a notion of whether they're happy to do it for the length of time and the money that you've got. But you start to get the detail in from all of the departments, so that you can start sort of telling them exactly what you want to do, how many days prep, how many days strike, what we want to change. I mean, quite often designers will go in and want to paint someone's house, or if you're filming in countryside, you might have to deal with multiple organisations, and quite often there are all sorts of organisations like Natural England that have overriding jurisdiction, even if someone else owns it. So it's a bit like English Heritage can tell you what colour you can paint your windows in your house if it's listed. Equally, if you're filming in nature, you've got Natural England who can tell you what you can and can't do because of a crested newt or a butterfly or whatever, and that's sort of quite often quite a minefield of legislation. We might be, as Becky said, closing roads, dealing with businesses, and more councils and organisations will expect us to do incredibly detailed residents consultations when there's a big impact. So Becky, I presume you're closing down a road to do that, and Cindy and other bodies like highways and the councils will want to know that all the businesses have been consulted and spoken with. So it might be finding positions for a cherry picker for a night shoot, it might be speaking to 300 businesses, or it might be a really simple want to film in someone's kitchen, and you just do a letter drop and a door knock on a few neighbours, and it's all sorted. But I think, as everyone's touched on here, every single job is different, every single location is different and has its own challenges and things, and I think that's probably what keeps us interested. It's not the smell of bins, it's not the smell of diesel in the morning, it's the fact that on every single job you learn something new, you deal with a different sort of set of challenges somewhere, something, and it might feel like it's just another kitchen, but it's never just another kitchen. There's always something that's different or new, or you meet amazing people. Genuinely, there are a handful of people that I've met over the years who I still see and communicate with just on a level as friends, not as work. But even the ones that I don't keep in touch with, for the duration of the shoot, they are amazing and fascinating, and I love spending time with most of them, not quite all of them. There are a few basket cases out there.
Like in there, that like one of the things is with location managing as well, is just as Harriet was touching on, that like that there might be like large gaps in one's knowledge and experience. I did a film a few years ago where and and also this is like a lot of productions don't do any kind of due diligence beforehand in terms of what's actually, like from a consultation point of view, what's actually involved in making a film. I did a film which was, we set up a festival site. They were going to try and shoot it near London, but because of the plane noise, they decided that they moved it over to Bristol. And basically I think we had about 5 weeks prep to get everything together. We had to find the field to put the festival site in, and the site was going to be there for 2 months, and we're going to have up to 1,000 supporting artists there. I looked into it, and you need planning permission to have any kind of like structures over a certain period of time. We didn't have enough time. We had to get planning people in, and what we then had to do was risk assess what the possible objections might be from Natural England, from like impact studies, like in terms of like traffic and things like that, and then try to, as much as possible, like manage the risk so that there weren't any complaints, and we weren't getting people coming along and like shutting us down. And yeah, so that can happen quite a lot. And it's also, I mean, I don't know if Harriet's worked abroad, but like working abroad as well is quite difficult, because also like knowing how, like I know how our council work, but if you're going and working in Dubai with their Dubai government, they've got a completely different way of doing things, and things that you think that you know that you can rely on, you usually say, I can leave that for a while, I can sort that out because I know that that's something I can do. If you're doing that abroad, you can end up with egg all over your face, kind of thing. So anyway, I just want to say.
Yeah. Have you had any experience, any examples you can give us there, Michael?
Well, I mean, one of the things we've got in Dubai quite a lot, and one of the things over there is that they, so we were filming in a hotel, and we're filming in this presidential suite, and we decided the night before that we needed an extra room to feed people, and this was like a conference room to feed about 40 people, and they turned around and they said, no, you can't do that, because you have to fill out a form, which is then sent to the government, the film office, and then it then has to be signed off by the hotel. And in Dubai, because of terrorism, that you're not allowed to have a meeting of more like 6 people or something like that. So we didn't have enough lead time. This is just something as innocuous as sorting out an extra conference room to feed people, and we weren't allowed to do it because we didn't have permission from the government. So just things.
Wow, wow. So I hear many challenges, but you all still do it, and you've been doing it for years. Some of you not as long as others. So what's the thing that you love about it? What do you love about it?
I think we're all slightly crazy. I think you have to be slightly crazy to do it.
Yeah.
What are the characteristics? What makes a good location manager?
I think having a good diplomacy helped me in my time as a location manager, because it's kind of like balancing, you're kind of like the bridge between the crew, which is, they have their own mentality about filming, because usually other departments kind of have everything under their control, whereas with us, we're like the bridge between the film world and the real world, and they don't operate the same way all the time. Like obviously people have businesses and it's that they're closing down for us to come and film in, so they have certain concerns. So I think having just sort of balancing, obviously you're always on the side of the crew, because you want the film to work, but you also have to side with the outside collaborators, the real world collaborators, and keep them happy all the time. So there's this weird balancing act of just like, just constantly being diplomatic. I really like that aspect of it. I also like what Harriet was saying about sort of having I much prefer the creative side of making the film side, but then I really like that I've had to become this like logistical person as well, because wasn't necessarily always my strength, but now I've implemented it into everything that I think about, whether it's just in my day-to-day life or at my job. So I just, there's a lot of balance going on, basically creative and logistic, and then also in this diplomacy as well. So I really like that about the job.
Cool. And
I think it's the variety as well. I mean, it is, you know, I sort of, after well over 25 years, the notion of going to the same place and doing the same thing every day just would fill me with horror, because I wouldn't know how to do it anymore. I mean, I'm used to being at the top of a glass building discussing how we're going to, you know, rig a camera from outside the glass building, to standing in the middle of a marsh in Essex discussing, you know, the crested newts. No days, nothing is the same, and it's the people you meet, it's the variety. Yeah,
Absolutely, that's true.
I like the creative process. I like the I get very excited about especially if I'm on board with the project kind of thing. I get very excited about just kind of being on the scent. You know, you've got to use your kind of detective skills and use, you know, use your eye, use my eye kind of thing. And I really enjoy that more than any other part of it, really. But I like having access, also seeing things that people ordinarily see, you know, kind of like going backstage in these like incredible buildings. And I mean, I'm just so jealous, Harriet, that you managed to get into the House of Commons. I'm so jealous. I can't believe
I have you know, we did 4 days of filming there. God, it must be about 7 years ago now. And we had sort of 200 rioting suffragettes and horses and things, and it was incredible because they can put on state visits. They absolutely, you know, they can have Obama, they can have Trump, you know, they can have any head of state there, and they have these really formal visits. But a film crew was just mindfuck for them, because the film crews just scatter, try and fix everything themselves, won't do what they're told, and they was just like, you know, trying to keep them. It was herding cats, and that really freaked them out, because they were not quite as controllable. But yes, I did get to explore all sorts of parts of it that probably a lot of people never ever will see. And yeah, we pulled off something really amazing. It was serendipity a bit at the time. The right people. We had to get 6 different subcommittees of the House of Commons to agree to it, who all only sit on 1 day a week or 1 day a month, and it was a long and drawn out process. And I think I was lucky the right people were there at the time. I'm not sure they're so film friendly now. Sorry, Michael.
I was just going to say, you've got to get the approach. If you've got people just sitting down like 1 day a month on a committee, you've got to get the approach right, completely right, haven't you? Like, you've only get one chance, kind of. Amazing. Planetary alignment. It
absolutely was serendipity. It was alignment. It was all sorts of things, and the right people were there who wanted to make it happen. It was a story that they felt was relevant. So, you know, fortunately, it wasn't a film about sleaze and scandal. I think they might not have been quite so welcoming at that point. But, you know, one of the things I've come across in the last month or so is that there's a location that quite a well-known drama, or well-received drama, filmed at a couple of years ago, and they filmed all over it, and they filmed with drones, and they filmed, you know, and it is a SSSI site, and I'm currently trying to work my way through it. And I don't think they ever went through the Natural England route and things like that. And so just because it's happened before doesn't mean I'm going to be able to pull it off this time, because I didn't make the mistake, because obviously I have to tick every box and get the right permissions, but I inadvertently have got Natural England involved because I questioned the ownership of a tiny bit of this marsh. And now they are saying that I need their consent to do any filming. Now, I know for a fact that the previous drama did not go through this. And I'm in real danger of it scuppering my entire shoot. And I've got producers going, well, this drama filmed there and that drama filmed there. And I'm like, yeah, but do you know what? They might have not done it properly. So that's interesting when you think someone else has done something and it should be simple, great, they know what they're dealing with. Actually, it's not that simple necessarily.
That's always one of the worries. I mean, I was going to say one of the things is that, I mean, I don't know if it's a good thing, a characteristic of being a location manager for me. I'm quite paranoid. I'm quite worried that I'm going to miss something, that someone's going to turn up from Natural England while we're shooting, kind of thing, and just going, hey, what's going on here, kind of thing. It does happen, you know, that there are people, oversights I've heard about. I mean, I won't be too specific, but people being thrown out of public places because they're running through somewhere with people with machine guns. The people with machine guns, and they haven't told the police. And I mean, that's quite an obvious example. But I'm always like, you've just got to be you've got to dot the I's and cross the T's. And sometimes you can get into a situation where, you know, you start digging and then you find out that you need to have permission from X, Y, Z. But, you know, I always kind of counter that with, well, if they turn up on the day and we're filming, we get shut down. That could create such huge problems.
It's far more problematic, isn't it? I mean, this is really geeky and it will probably only be of interest to the panel. It might blow everyone else's mind. But having done this for, you know, nearly 3 decades, I discovered a new organisation that I had no idea existed about 3 weeks ago. It's called the MMO. And, you know, if you do anything below the high water line that is involved of any sort of structure, then they need to license you, and they won't even think about licensing you in under 12 weeks. I mean, they sort of more usually deal with building bridges or, you know, shoring up railway sidings that are sort of coastal locations, and they're quite a serious organisation. But I had genuinely never heard of them, and I don't know any other location manager that's ever heard of them. But if they get involved, they can really cause you a lot of problem. I'm hoping that we're going to try and avoid them, but yeah, you can still find out new licensing, what would we call them, those sort of organisations that have jurisdiction over a blanket almost anything. And if I'm still discovering them, you know, and I'm sure everyone on this call is still discovering new organisations that can throw a whole bag of spanners into your works. Emily is asking a question about whether we pay them. Yes, absolutely. We always pay them. Even if you're on a very low budget film, I would always recommend paying them something, because then you've got a business relationship with them. So, you know, even if you're doing a student film or a director a favour who's stepping up and wants you to work on their incredibly low budget film, I think you always have to have some money in that relationship, because otherwise you're always beholden to them. You're on the back foot. You can't have that sort of upfront business relationship of, we're asking you for this, we're paying you for that, and there's the agreement. So yes, I would say we always pay. I don't know if anyone else would disagree with that, but
no, I totally agree. And of course a contract as well, because yes, I have known of productions where the location manager hasn't had a contract in place, and it's yes, it's not gone very well. So yes, it's not gone very well. And then there was another question there was just, can you give any tips on how you win over a location?
I would say if you've got to win them over, you probably shouldn't be there. I mean, I've certainly walked away from a location because I haven't felt the owner's comfortable with it. But if it's just sort of, if they're cautious because they've never done it before, then be completely honest. You know, tell them what 20 trucks and 150 crew look like. If necessary, show them photos of other shoots, because there's nothing worse than sort of, you think you've been over it and you've discussed the 150 your closest friends that you're going to bring with you, and all these trucks which are full of equipment, by the way, which is probably going to come off the truck and into their house, and somehow they just don't visualize it. So I would be very clear. I'd never pretend that they won't notice us, or that we're going to go in ninja like, stealth like, and you know, you're going to notice us. We're paying you a fee for inconvenience, and this is what the inconvenience is going to be like. And I think mostly they appreciate that honesty.
Brilliant. Yes, no, absolutely. So we've only got a couple of minutes to go. So just any advice for anyone that wants to get into the locations department? what would it be? Kind of a 2-word answer or a 3-word answer from everyone.
Don't do
Becky?
it. Don't do it.
Becky, you've swapped into the location department, so you out of all of us, you could have stayed out, but you chose to come over to our side.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Because we've literally got a minute, seconds left.
Have we? I thought we were going on for longer than that. I think you just have to be very open and very willing, and you know, you have to be happy to look after the parking, look after the rubbish, do whatever anyone asks, and you'll get noticed. And if you do it with a smile and good humour, then you know, you really will get noticed. And be open to new experiences. There are a couple of other questions there, Cindy, if you want us to.
No, because we have not even a minute left to go, and I've got to wrap up on time. So yeah, so I want to really say thank you to everyone, because I know everyone's working, to the panel for joining us. Also, thanks to the sponsors, the National Film and Television School. We run a course called Working in the Locations Department that is delivered by Harriet. So we do it every year around February, March. So if you're interested, follow Film Birmingham on social media if you want to hear about the next course that we do. So thank you very much, everyone.